The Gatekept Power of Speaking Less. Learn to Speak with Impact by Audible Insights. Introduction. Most people don't realize how much they are giving away with their words. Every sentence spoken out of habit, every unnecessary explanation, every moment spent trying to fill the silence. These are small leaks of power, imperceptible at first but undeniable in their impact. You may not have noticed it yet, but your words are costing you respect, influence, and authority. And it's happening in ways you don't even see. Imagine this. You make a point in a conversation, but instead of letting it land, you immediately follow it up with more words, clarifying, justifying, adding. The silence feels uncomfortable, so you fill it, unknowingly diluting the weight of what you just said. You explain yourself before anyone even asks a question. You rush to fill pauses, and without realizing it, you are training people to listen less and interrupt more. You are teaching them that your words don't require their full attention because they know you will keep talking. But now, imagine the opposite. You say what you need to say, and then you stop. You don't explain. You don't justify. You don't rush to fill the space. You let the silence hang. The weight of your words lingers. The people in the room shift their focus. They process what you said because they weren't given an easy escape from it. And in that moment, something shifts. You hold the room without trying. This book is not about saying nothing. It is about saying what matters and allowing it to land. It's about breaking the unconscious habits that have made your speech weaker than it should be. It's about learning the art of restraint, of choosing silence over noise, of making every word carry undeniable impact. By the time you finish this journey, you won't just speak differently. You will be different. You will feel the shift in the way people respond to you. You will notice the weight your presence carries, even before you open your mouth. You will understand what the most powerful communicators in the world have always known. Less isn't just more. Less is power. Chapter 1. Noise vs. Signal. Most people don't speak. They leak words. They talk to fill space, to ease discomfort, to prove they belong. They don't realize that every extra word dilutes their presence, weakens their message, and makes them easier to ignore. If you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling unheard, unnoticed, or as if your words carried no weight, the problem wasn't what you said. The problem was how much of it you said. Think about the last time you spoke in a group. Did you say something and then immediately add more just to make sure you were understood? Did you repeat yourself in different ways, hoping to drive your point home? Did you start speaking before you fully knew what you wanted to say? If so, you're not alone. Most people do this. They've been conditioned to believe that speaking more makes them more convincing, that filling silence proves confidence, that taking up verbal space means taking up real space. But that's a lie. The truth is, the more words you use, the less impact each one has. The people who command the most attention aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who make their words count. A conversation is like a crowded room. If there's too much noise, no single voice stands out. But when everything goes quiet and only one voice speaks, it cuts through with force. Your speech is no different. Right now, you might be filling the room with too much noise, words that don't serve a purpose, explanations that weaken your authority, statements that trail off into nothing. You might think you're adding value, but in reality, you're just making it easier for people to tune you out. That stops now. The first shift you must make is recognizing the difference between noise and signal. Noise is everything extra, filler words, redundant explanations, nervous chatter. Signal is what truly matters, the essence of your message, the part that actually needs to be heard. Most people have never trained themselves to separate the two. That's what you will do now. The next time you speak, observe yourself. Pay attention to how often you say something just to fill silence. Notice when you explain something that didn't need explaining. Catch yourself when you rephrase a statement because you think the first version wasn't strong enough. Then, stop. Let silence take its place. Resist the urge to add more. Watch what happens. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to jump in to clarify to make sure everyone understands. You'll feel the pull of old habits. But if you can sit with that discomfort, you will see something surprising. People will start listening differently. The moment you remove the noise, your words become more valuable. Instead of glazing over or waiting for their turn to speak, people will lean in. They will sense that when you speak, you mean it. One of the fastest ways to test this is in your daily conversations. The next time someone asks you a question, answer it in as few words as possible, and then stop. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't explain unless they ask for clarification. If they do, answer briefly and stop again. See how the conversation changes. You will notice that when you speak less, people take more responsibility for understanding you. They listen harder. They ask better questions. And most importantly, they start to feel the weight of your words. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is an amplifier for it. When you remove the excess, what remains becomes undeniable. But this is just the beginning. To truly shift how you communicate, you must go beyond simply speaking less. You must learn to make every word count. And that starts with understanding the weight of your words. Chapter 2. The weight of your words. Most people throw words around like loose change, careless, thoughtless, easily replaced. They speak without considering the impact, assuming that more words will make their point stronger. But words, when used with precision, are not cheap. They are currency. The difference between someone who speaks with impact and someone who gets ignored is not intelligence, confidence, or vocabulary. It's weight. Think about the last time you heard someone speak and their words stayed with you long after they finished. It wasn't because they talked the longest or used the most impressive language. It was because their words had substance. They landed. They meant something. And the reason they meant something was simple. They were chosen with care. Most people don't choose their words. They spill them. They start talking before they know what they want to say. They fill gaps with half-thoughts, soften strong statements with weak qualifiers, and dilute their authority with unnecessary explanations. They apologize before making a point. They ask permission to be heard instead of assuming their words deserve space. And as a result, their speech becomes weightless, easily ignored, easily forgotten. If you want to command attention, your words must feel like they matter. Not just to you, but to the people listening. Every sentence should carry intention. Every pause should hold meaning. Every statement should land with the full force of your conviction. This doesn't mean you need to be dramatic or overly serious. It means you need to speak as if you are saying something worth hearing. There are 3 immediate shifts you must make to add weight to your words. The first is slowing down. Right now, you may speak at a pace that betrays your own authority. You rush through sentences as if your words don't deserve the space they take up. You don't give your ideas room to breathe, and in doing so, you rob them of their power. Powerful speakers do not rush. They take their time. They allow their words to settle. They pause long enough for people to process, to absorb, to feel the weight of what was said. The next time you speak, deliberately slow down. Take longer pauses between thoughts. Resist the urge to fill every moment with sound. Let silence do some of the work for you. If you are not used to this, it will feel unnatural at first. You may worry that you sound hesitant or unsure. You don't. You sound like someone who is in control. The second shift is eliminating weak language. Pay attention to how often you use phrases that dilute your authority. I think. I just wanted to say. Maybe this is a dumb idea, but... These words serve no purpose other than to make your speech sound less certain, less intentional, less necessary. The difference between "I think we should try this" and "we should try this" is the difference between a suggestion and a statement. One can be ignored. The other demands consideration. Start removing these phrases from your speech. Instead of saying, "I just feel like maybe we should," say, "We should." Instead of asking, "Does that make sense?" say nothing and let people process on their own. Instead of softening your points, make them and let them stand. The third shift is learning to end sentences with finality. Many people, out of habit, trail off at the end of their statements, as if they are waiting for permission to stop talking. They use rising intonations that make everything sound like a question. They add unnecessary phrases like "you know" or "right" that weaken the strength of what they just said. When you finish speaking, finish. Do not add more just because the silence feels uncomfortable. Do not look to others to validate your words with a nod or a response. Say what you need to say, then stop. Let the weight of your words settle before moving on. The moment you start treating your words as valuable, others will too. When you slow your speech, remove weak language, and end with authority, you will notice an immediate shift in how people respond to you. They will listen more intently. They will take your words more seriously. And most importantly, they will feel your presence, even in your silence. But knowing how to speak with weight is not enough. You must also understand how to use silence itself as a tool. That is where your real power begins. Chapter 3. The power of silence. Most people fear silence. They treat it like a void that needs to be filled, an awkward gap that signals uncertainty or discomfort. They rush to fill it, thinking that doing so keeps the conversation moving, keeps them in control, keeps them relevant. But what they fail to see is that silence isn't weakness. Silence is power. Imagine two people speaking. One talks continuously, filling every pause with explanations, disclaimers, and nervous laughter. The other speaks with measured precision, leaving space after each thought, allowing their words to land, allowing others to feel their presence even in the absence of sound. Who holds more authority? Who commands more respect? The answer is obvious. Silence is a tool. The people who understand this, leaders, negotiators, influencers, use it strategically. They know that when they stop talking, something remarkable happens. People start paying attention. If you've ever been in a conversation where someone paused for just a beat longer than expected, you felt the effect. Your brain automatically leans in, wondering what's coming next. Your focus sharpens. The moment gains weight. Now, imagine if you could wield that effect intentionally, if you could use silence to make every word you speak feel more valuable. You can. But first, you must break the habit of fearing silence. Right now, you may be filling space unconsciously, jumping in to explain a point before anyone asks for clarification, answering a question the moment it's asked, speaking over someone else's pause because it feels too long. These habits are deeply ingrained, but they are also reversible. The first step is to develop awareness. Start by noticing the moments when you feel the impulse to fill silence. In conversations, in meetings, in casual discussions, catch yourself when you start to speak just to avoid a pause. Once you begin to recognize these moments, you can start replacing them with intention. The second step is to practice restraint. The next time you're in a conversation and you make a point, stop. Let it sit. If someone asks you a question, take a moment before answering. A 2-second pause may feel long to you, but to others, it signals thoughtfulness. It signals confidence. It signals control. This will feel unnatural at first. You may worry that the silence makes you seem hesitant or unsure. It doesn't. It makes you seem deliberate. People associate rapid speech with nervousness and uncertainty. They associate measured pauses with depth and authority. The more you lean into silence, the more others will feel the weight of your presence. Another way to harness silence is to use it as a response. When someone speaks to fill space, rambling, over-explaining, nervously justifying, resist the urge to match their energy. Instead, stay quiet. Let their words hang in the air. You will notice something fascinating. They will often keep talking, trying to close the gap, trying to justify their own speech. And the more they talk, the more power shifts to you. Silence can also be used to influence. If you make a request or present an idea, say it, and then stop. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. Many people weaken their own statements by immediately following them with justifications. I think we should move forward with this plan because... And then they go on to explain, to persuade, to fill the space before anyone even reacts. But when you speak and then stop, you force the other person to sit with what you said. You make them engage with your words, not just passively hear them. This technique is especially powerful in negotiations. When you state your position and remain silent, the other person feels pressure to respond. And more often than not, they will reveal more than they intended. They will negotiate against themselves. They will try to fill the space you left open. And in that space, you gain an advantage. But silence isn't just about commanding attention or gaining the upper hand. It's also about creating space for depth. In most conversations, people are so focused on what they're going to say next that they barely listen to what's being said. But when you embrace silence, you give yourself the chance to truly hear, to truly observe. You notice the shifts in tone, the hesitation in someone's voice, the weight behind their words. You become more perceptive, and that perception makes you more influential. To start integrating silence into your speech, begin with these 3 exercises. Pause before responding. The next time someone asks you a question, wait 2 seconds before answering. Let the silence settle. If they try to fill the gap, let them. If they don't, answer with intention. This small change alone will shift how others perceive you. End with silence. When you make a statement, resist the urge to follow it with more words. Say what you need to say, then stop. Let your words land. Watch how people react when they aren't immediately given an easy way out of processing what you've said. Observe others. Pay attention to people who use silence effectively. Watch how great speakers pause. Watch how leaders allow space in their conversations. Notice how silence makes certain moments feel heavier, more significant. Then, start applying what you learn. Once you begin to master silence, you will notice an undeniable shift in how people respond to you. They will start giving you more space in conversations. They will take your words more seriously. They will wait for you to speak instead of talking over you. And most importantly, they will feel the weight of your presence, not just in your words but in the moments between them. Because silence, when used with purpose, is not empty. It is the space where power lives. Chapter 4. Breaking the habit of over-explaining. You know the feeling. You make a point, but before you even let it land, you rush to explain. You rephrase, soften, clarify. You fill the space with justifications as if your words alone aren't enough. You over-explain, not because it's necessary, but because silence feels uncomfortable, because you fear being misunderstood. Because somewhere along the way you learn that people won't accept your words at face value. But here's the truth. The more you explain, the less powerful you sound. Over-explaining signals insecurity. It tells people that you don't fully trust your own words, so they shouldn't either. It trains them to tune you out, to wait for you to get to the point, to see your speech as background noise rather than something that commands attention. Think about the most compelling people you know, the ones who speak and immediately draw others in. They don't ramble. They don't justify. They don't rush to fill the silence after they speak. They say what needs to be said and they let it stand. Their confidence comes from their certainty, not just in what they're saying, but in the fact that it doesn't need extra decoration. Over-explaining doesn't come from a lack of intelligence. It comes from a misplaced need for validation. You explain and re-explain because you want to be understood. You want to make sure people get it. You want to leave no room for doubt. But in doing so, you actually create the opposite effect. Instead of sounding clear, you sound uncertain. Instead of making your words stronger, you dilute them. Instead of leaving an impression, you let your message drown in unnecessary details. To break the habit of over-explaining, you need to train yourself to trust your words. And that starts with making a fundamental shift in your communication. Say less, mean more. The first step is learning to recognize the moment you begin to over-explain. It happens fast, sometimes without you even realizing it. You make a statement and before the silence can settle, you start adding, "What I mean is, just to clarify, let me rephrase." These phrases don't strengthen your point, they weaken it. The next time you speak, pay close attention to when you feel the urge to add more. When you catch yourself starting to explain, stop. Let the moment breathe. Notice the discomfort that comes with silence and sit with it. The space after your words is not your enemy, it's where your message settles. The second step is training yourself to end with confidence. Many people unconsciously soften their words at the end of a statement, either by trailing off or by adding a question-like tone. This makes everything sound tentative. Instead of saying, "This is the best approach," they say, "I think this might be the best approach." Instead of stating, "We should move forward with this," they say, "We should probably move forward with this, right?" These small shifts completely change how your words are received. To correct this, practice ending your sentences as statements, not invitations for debate. If you believe something, say it. Let it stand. If someone needs clarification, they will ask. If they don't, your words were enough. The third step is embracing the power of unanswered questions. Over-explainers often feel the need to answer every possible question before it's even asked. They anticipate objections and try to neutralize them preemptively. But true confidence comes from allowing space for curiosity. When you leave something unsaid, it invites engagement. It forces people to lean in, to ask, to think. Try this. The next time you share an idea, resist the urge to fill in every possible gap. Say what you need to say, then stop. If someone has a question, let them ask it. If they don't, trust that they understood. And if they misunderstood, let them clarify what they need, rather than assuming you need to clarify everything for them. When you stop over-explaining, people start listening differently. They hear your words with more weight. They don't tune out, waiting for you to wrap it up. They take your statements at face value, instead of assuming you don't quite mean what you're saying. But most importantly, you begin to feel the shift internally. You start to trust your own voice. You start to see that your words don't need excessive justification to be valid. You realize that the most powerful communicators aren't the ones who speak the most. They're the ones who speak with conviction and let their words stand on their own. And once you internalize this, something incredible happens. You stop seeking validation through speech. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. You start speaking with the quiet authority of someone who doesn't need to prove themselves. That's when people start paying attention. That's when your words begin to carry real weight. Chapter 5. Speaking with intent. Most people talk simply because it's their turn to speak. They say things out of habit, out of obligation, out of the need to fill the air with noise. But when you speak without intent, you speak without impact. Your words become background noise, something to be tolerated rather than something to be heard. The most powerful communicators do something different. They speak with purpose. They don't just say things, they mean them. They don't waste words, they place them. Every sentence carries weight because every sentence is deliberate. Speaking with intent isn't about being serious all the time. It isn't about calculating every word or rehearsing conversations in your head. It's about ensuring that when you do speak, you are fully present. That your words serve a purpose, that they move things forward instead of simply filling space. Right now, you might be speaking on autopilot more than you realize. You make small talk you don't care about. You answer questions with generic responses. You engage in conversations just to be polite. And without noticing it, you dilute your presence. You weaken your voice. Think about the people whose words hold weight. They don't talk for the sake of talking. They don't jump into every conversation just to be part of it. They choose when to speak, and when they do, people listen. Not because they are louder, not because they dominate the room, but because their words carry intent. The first step to speaking with intent is learning to pause before you speak. Right now, when someone asks you a question, you might respond immediately without even thinking. The words leave your mouth before your mind has had a chance to process. You are reacting, not communicating. To break this habit, start adding a pause between the moment you hear something and the moment you respond. Even 1 second makes a difference. That single beat forces you to be present. It forces you to actually think about what you want to say, rather than just saying something. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. You may worry that people will think you're slow to respond, that they'll mistake your pause for hesitation. They won't. In reality, they will perceive you as thoughtful, deliberate, engaged. The difference is subtle but powerful. The second step is making every word earn its place. Most people use filler words without realizing it, empty phrases that weaken their message. They say things like, "to be honest," as if they weren't being honest before. They add "kind of" or "maybe" to statements that should be firm. They start sentences with "I think" instead of just stating their thought. If you want your words to have impact, you need to strip them down to their strongest form. This means removing qualifiers. It means eliminating empty phrases. It means making your sentences sharper, cleaner, more direct. Try this. The next time you speak, challenge yourself to say the same thing in fewer words. Instead of saying, "I think this might be a good idea because," say, "This is a good idea because." Instead of saying, "To be honest, I kind of feel like we should," say, "We should." This small shift changes how people hear you. It makes you sound more confident, more authoritative, more intentional. And more importantly, it changes how you hear yourself. It trains you to believe in your own words. The third step is aligning your speech with your presence. Many people undermine themselves not with what they say, but how they say it. Their voice drops at the end of sentences, making everything sound uncertain. They speak too quickly, as if they are afraid of taking up space. They laugh nervously, soften their statements, or turn their opinions into questions. If you want to speak with intent, your delivery must match your message. This means speaking at a controlled pace. Rushing makes your words seem less valuable. Slowing down forces people to listen. Using pauses intentionally. Silence adds weight. Let your words breathe. Ending sentences with finality. Don't let your voice trail off. Stop speaking when your point is made. Holding eye contact. If you break eye contact too soon, you signal doubt. Stay present, stay engaged. The difference between a person who speaks with authority and a person who gets ignored is not knowledge, intelligence, or even confidence. It's intent. When you speak with intent, your words feel different. People hear them differently. They land. They stay. They move things forward. But intent is not just about what you say. It's about what you don't say. And that is where the true transformation begins. Chapter 6. The discipline of restraint. There is a quiet power in knowing when not to speak. Most people don't realize how much they reveal through unnecessary words. They talk to fill silence, to ease discomfort, to prove their knowledge, to ensure they are not overlooked. But in doing so, they give away their power. They expose their uncertainty. They let their words work against them instead of for them. Restraint is not silence for silence's sake. It is the intentional act of holding back when speaking would serve no purpose. It is the discipline of resisting the impulse to explain, justify, or dominate. It is the quiet confidence of someone who does not need to prove themselves with excess words. Right now, you may be speaking more than necessary without realizing it. You may be oversharing in an attempt to build rapport. You may be revealing your thoughts too soon in conversations. weakening your position before you even realize it. You may be giving explanations that no one asked for, diluting the strength of your message. Every unnecessary word is a missed opportunity. The most influential people, leaders, negotiators, thinkers, understand this. They choose their words carefully, not because they are withholding, but because they recognize that restraint creates intrigue. It signals authority. It shifts the balance of power in conversation. Restraint is not about being distant or cold. It is about being intentional. It is about knowing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. The first step in mastering restraint is breaking the habit of impulsive speech. Right now, you may be speaking as a reflex, responding instantly, filling space, reacting without thinking. You may feel an urgency to answer quickly, as if a pause signals incompetence. But this is an illusion. The next time someone asks you a question, pause before answering. Even if you already know what to say, wait. Let the silence settle. This simple habit does two things. First, it forces you to be deliberate, ensuring that your response is intentional. Second, it shifts the dynamic. It makes the other person more attentive. It subtly signals that you are not reacting, you are choosing. This is what powerful speakers do. They do not rush to fill gaps. They let silence do some of the work. They understand that waiting a beat before speaking changes how their words land. The second step is learning when to withhold information. Many people sabotage themselves by saying too much. They give away their plans before necessary. They soften their stance by over-explaining. They volunteer unnecessary details that weaken their position. Consider this. If someone asks you how your project is going, do you answer directly, or do you instinctively start listing challenges, delays, or insecurities? If someone asks for your opinion, you give it concisely, or do you hedge and qualify until your point loses impact? Powerful communicators don't burden their words with excess. They answer what is asked, nothing more, nothing less. This does not mean being evasive. It means recognizing that not all information needs to be shared immediately. The next time you're in a discussion, practice saying less than you normally would. If someone asks a direct question, answer it clearly, then stop. Resist the urge to fill silence with additional explanations. Watch how the conversation shifts when you allow space instead of rushing to justify. The third step is mastering the art of letting others speak first. Many people feel an urge to be the first to respond, the first to share, the first to put their thoughts on the table. But speaking first is not always an advantage. In negotiations, the person who speaks less often holds more power. In conversations, the person who listens more often controls the direction. In debates, the person who allows others to overextend themselves gains the upper hand. The next time you're in a discussion, resist the impulse to speak first. Let others reveal their thoughts before you share yours. Listen, observe, gather information. When you do speak, you will do so with greater clarity and impact, because you will not be reacting, you will be responding. Restraint is not weakness. It is control. It is the ability to recognize that words are a tool, and like any tool, they are most effective when used with precision. Once you develop the discipline of restraint, you will notice an undeniable shift. People will listen more attentively when you speak. Your presence will feel stronger. Your words will carry more weight. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the person who knows when to stay quiet is the one who commands the most attention. Chapter 7. The power of leaving things unsaid. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every opinion needs to be voiced. Not every explanation needs to be given. Yet most people struggle with this. They speak out of habit, out of fear of being misunderstood, out of the need to be seen as competent, agreeable, or knowledgeable. They fill spaces with words that don't need to be there, words that weaken their presence rather than strengthen it. But here's the truth. The most impactful communicators understand the power of omission. They know that what you don't say is just as important, sometimes even more important, than what you do. They recognize that restraint isn't just about holding back. It's about strategically allowing silence, ambiguity, and curiosity to work in their favor. When you leave certain things unsaid, you create space for others to engage. You create intrigue. You shift the balance of power in conversations. You force people to lean in, rather than passively absorb. Most importantly, you signal confidence, because only someone who is secure in their words has the discipline to say less. The first step in mastering this skill is breaking the habit of over-disclosure. Right now, you may be revealing more than necessary in conversations without realizing it. You may be explaining your reasoning before anyone even challenges it. You may be listing justifications for your choices when no one has asked for them. You may be exposing unnecessary details that diminish your position. Think about the last time you were in a meeting, an interview, or even a casual conversation. Did you say more than what was required? Did you feel the need to explain yourself fully, just to make sure you were understood? Did you talk past the point where your message was already clear? This is an unconscious habit, but it has consequences. Every extra word you add beyond what is needed weakens the impact of what you've already said. The next time you're about to speak, pause. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Does this strengthen my message or does it dilute it? If the answer is the latter, don't say it. Let it remain unsaid. At first, this will feel unnatural. You may feel the urge to explain yourself, to fill in gaps, to make sure your point is fully understood. Resist it. Let your words stand on their own. Watch how people react when you don't give them every detail. Watch how silence forces them to think, to ask, to engage. The second step is recognizing the value of strategic ambiguity. Most people believe that clarity means explaining everything. They assume that leaving anything unsaid creates confusion. But in reality, the most powerful communicators understand that ambiguity, when used correctly, creates intrigue. Consider this. If someone asks, "What's your strategy for handling this?" and you respond with, "I have a clear approach and I'll share more when the time is right," you create interest. You make the other person want to know more. You control the timing and direction of the conversation. Now compare that to a response filled with excessive details, justifications, and preemptive explanations. The moment you over-explain, you lose your power. You give away too much too soon. You allow your words to be dissected, questioned, and weakened before they've even had a chance to make an impact. Try this. In your next conversation, deliberately leave out a detail that you would normally include. Not to deceive, but to allow space for curiosity. Let the other person ask for more. Let them fill in the blanks. Notice how this shifts the energy, how it makes your words feel more intentional, more controlled, more intriguing. The third step is embracing the discomfort of silence. Many people speak simply because silence makes them uncomfortable. They rush to fill it, fearing that if they don't, they will appear hesitant, unprepared, or awkward. But silence, when used with confidence, is one of the most powerful tools in communication. Silence forces people to process what you've said. It makes your words linger. It creates presence. Right now, you may be cutting yourself off from this power by speaking too quickly, by answering questions immediately, by rushing to explain before your words have even had a chance to settle. Break this habit by practicing controlled silence. When you finish a thought, stop. Don't immediately follow it with an additional explanation. Let it stand. When someone asks you a question, take a breath before responding. When you feel the urge to fill a pause, resist it. The more comfortable you become with silence, the more powerful your speech becomes. People will listen more intently. They will respect your words more. They will see you as someone who does not speak just to be heard, but speaks because they have something worth hearing. Once you embrace the power of leaving things unsaid, you will notice an undeniable shift. Conversations will become more dynamic. People will respond to you differently. Your presence will feel stronger, your words more deliberate. Because in the end, it is not the person who speaks the most who holds power. It is the person who speaks with purpose, leaving just enough unsaid to make others truly listen. Chapter 8. Owning the space without filling it. Powerful presence isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It isn't about dominating conversations or making sure you always have something to say. True presence, the kind that commands attention effortlessly, comes from the ability to hold space without needing to fill it. Think about the people you naturally respect when they enter a room. They don't demand attention, they draw it in. They don't rush to be heard, they create a sense of significance before they even speak. Their presence is felt, not forced. Now think about those who try too hard, who talk too much, too fast, too eagerly. Their words blend together. They push for attention, but in doing so, they diminish their own impact. The more they speak, the less weight their words carry. The mistake most people make is assuming that to be noticed, they must constantly contribute. They fill every silence, respond to every question immediately, and make sure their voice is always part of the conversation. But in reality, this behavior does the opposite of what they intend. Instead of appearing confident, they seem desperate. Instead of holding presence, they lose it. Owning space without filling it is a skill, a discipline of both mind and body. It is about cultivating a presence that commands attention before you even open your mouth. And when you do speak, it ensures that your words carry weight. The first step is developing an awareness of your nonverbal presence. Before you even say a word, your body communicates. Your posture, your eye contact, your stillness, or lack of it, shape how people perceive you. Right now, you may be undermining yourself without realizing it. You may be fidgeting when you speak, signaling nervousness. You may be leaning in too much, showing eagerness instead of control. You may be speaking too quickly, betraying an unconscious fear that people will lose interest. Presence begins before words. Pay attention to how you enter a room. Walk with intentionality. Take your time before sitting down. Resist the impulse to adjust, fidget, or shrink into the background. When standing, stand with stillness. Own the space you occupy. When sitting, avoid unnecessary movements that make you appear restless. Most importantly, make eye contact, longer than feels comfortable. Many people break eye contact too soon out of habit, subtly signaling a lack of confidence. Hold it just a beat longer than usual. Let people feel your presence before you even speak. The second step is resisting the instinct to prove yourself through words. Many people talk excessively because they feel a subconscious need to validate their intelligence, their worth, their relevance in the conversation. They over-explain, over-justify, and overshare because they fear that saying too little will make them seem insignificant. But the most powerful people speak less, and when they do, their words carry more weight. The next time you're in a discussion, challenge yourself to say half of what you normally would, not to be distant or disengaged, but to be intentional. When you do speak, say exactly what needs to be said, then stop. Don't add unnecessary explanations. Don't soften your words with qualifiers like "I think" or "maybe" or "I'm not sure," but say it, then let it land. At first, this will feel uncomfortable. You may feel an urge to fill the silence after you speak. Resist it. Let others process your words instead of rushing to add more. You will notice a shift almost immediately. People will pay closer attention when you do speak. They will register your words as more valuable. The third step is using silence as a tool, not a gap to be filled. Many people equate silence with awkwardness. They fear pauses in conversation, assuming they must step in to keep the flow going. But silence, when used intentionally, is one of the most powerful forms of communication. Think of silence as punctuation. A well-placed pause makes what you just said more impactful. It signals confidence. It allows your words to be absorbed instead of immediately overshadowed by more words. Try this. The next time you finish a statement, don't immediately follow it with another. Let silence settle. Let the weight of your words linger before anyone responds. It may feel unnatural at first, but this simple shift makes an enormous difference in how people hear you. Mastering the ability to hold space without filling it transforms how you are perceived. People will naturally give you more respect. Conversations will begin to flow toward you instead of away from you. You will feel a shift, not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. Because true presence isn't about taking up space, it's about owning it with intention. Chapter 9. The echo effect. Making words resonate. The most powerful words are not always the loudest or the most frequent. They are the ones that stay with people long after they've been spoken. They are the ones that echo. Think about a time when someone said something that stayed with you, something simple, yet profound. Maybe it was a single sentence that changed your perspective, a pause that made you rethink a moment, or a carefully chosen word that lingered in your mind for days. Now think about how much noise surrounds you every day. Conversations filled with words that vanish as soon as they are spoken. Meetings where people talk at length, but nothing truly sticks. Social interactions where voices blend into a background hum, quickly forgotten. The difference between forgettable words and words that resonate is not about how much you say. It's about how well you say it. Resonance happens when words are precise, intentional, and delivered with weight. It is not about impressing others with complexity. It is about striking a chord so deep that people feel the impact long after the conversation ends. The first step in making your words resonate is learning to say more with less. Many people dilute the strength of their words by over-explaining, adding unnecessary details, or using filler language. They speak in long-winded sentences, afraid that brevity will make them seem less knowledgeable. But in reality, the more concise your words, the more powerful they become. Consider this. If someone asks, "What do you think?" A forgettable response might be, "Well, I think there are a lot of factors to consider and it depends on a few different things." If we look at it from this angle, then maybe this is the best approach, but also, on the other hand, we have to be mindful of X and Y. So I guess, in my opinion, it kind of depends. Now, imagine instead responding with, "It's about clarity. If we prioritize that, the decision is obvious." Which response is more likely to be remembered? The second one, because it is distilled to its essence. It forces the listener to think, rather than passively absorb. It leaves space for interpretation and engagement. The next time you are about to speak, challenge yourself to say it in half the words. Strip away unnecessary qualifiers. Cut out filler phrases like "I think" or "maybe" or "just to add." Say exactly what you mean, then stop. The second step is mastering intentional repetition. Many people assume that once they've said something, it has been heard and understood. But in reality, people only remember what is reinforced. Repetition, when used strategically, makes words stick. Look at the most impactful speeches, interviews, and conversations. The most memorable moments often come from a simple idea repeated in a way that reinforces its weight. It's not about saying the same thing over and over. It's about subtly echoing a message until it becomes undeniable. Try this. The next time you're in a discussion, plant an idea early on. Then, later in the conversation, reinforce it, using different words, a different angle, or a simple callback. For example, if you begin by saying, "Confidence isn't about speaking more, it's about speaking with certainty," you can reinforce it later by saying, "Certainty carries more weight than volume." Same message, different phrasing, creating an echo effect. The third step is delivering words with weight. The way you say something matters just as much as what you say. Many people speak too quickly, too softly, or with uncertain energy, robbing their words of impact before they even land. Slow down. Let your words breathe. If something is important, don't rush through it. Let silence follow it. Let people absorb it before moving on. The next time you make a key statement, stop immediately after. Don't follow it with additional explanations. Don't soften it with nervous laughter or filler words. Just let it land. When you develop the ability to make words resonate, everything about your presence shifts. People start listening more intently. Your voice carries more weight. Your words linger in minds long after you've left the room. Because power isn't in saying more, it's in making what you do say impossible to forget. Chapter 10. Mastering the art of the pause. Most people are afraid of pauses. They rush to fill them, believing that silence is a void that must be covered with words. They think that if they stop speaking, even for a moment, they will lose control of the conversation, appear hesitant, or seem unprepared. But the truth is, those who understand the power of a well-placed pause command more attention than those who never stop talking. A pause, when used with intention, is not an absence of speech. It is a tool of impact. It amplifies your words, creates anticipation, and forces people to truly absorb what you say. Imagine listening to two different speakers. One speaks at a rapid pace, filling every moment with words, barely stopping to breathe. The other speaks with measured control, allowing pauses to shape their message. Which one do you instinctively respect more? Which one do you lean into, waiting for their next words? The answer is obvious. Yet, most people sabotage their own communication by rushing to speak, fearing the very thing that could make them more powerful: silence. The first step in mastering the art of the pause is breaking the habit of filling space with unnecessary words. Right now, you may be unconsciously adding filler phrases just to avoid silence. You might find yourself saying things like, "Well, what I mean is," basically, it's kind of like, "I just think that maybe." These phrases add no real value. They weaken your message and make you sound unsure. Instead of using fillers, practice stopping. Let your sentence end cleanly. Let the silence sit. Try this. The next time you feel the urge to add a filler phrase, replace it with a pause. Instead of saying, "I just think that maybe we should," say, "We should." Then stop. Let the words land without weakening them. At first, this will feel unnatural. You may worry that people will perceive the silence as hesitation. But what actually happens is the opposite. People lean in. They pay closer attention. They wait for your next words with anticipation. The second step is using pauses to create emphasis. Think about the most powerful moments in speeches, movies, or conversations. The lines that hit the hardest are often the ones that are surrounded by silence. If you say something important and immediately follow it with more words, its impact is diluted. But if you say it, then pause, the weight of your words lingers. For example, imagine saying, "Confidence isn't about speaking more, it's about speaking with certainty." Now imagine saying, "Confidence isn't about speaking more, pause, it's about speaking with certainty." Pause, the second version, is more powerful. The pauses create impact. They allow the listener to absorb the message fully before moving on. Try this. The next time you make a key statement, add a deliberate pause afterward. Let the silence create weight. Let people process what you just said. You'll notice an immediate shift in how they respond. The third step is using silence to take control of conversations. Many people believe that control in a conversation comes from speaking the most. But in reality, control often comes from the ability to hold silence. If someone asks you a question, don't rush to answer. Pause. Think. Let the silence build. This does two things. First, it makes your response appear more thoughtful and deliberate. Second, it subtly shifts the power dynamic. because when you pause, the other person starts anticipating your words, rather than the other way around. Silence can also be used to redirect energy in a conversation. If someone is speaking too aggressively, rather than matching their energy with more words, try responding with a calm, measured pause. It disrupts the rhythm, resets the tone, and forces them to adjust to you. Pauses also work in negotiations. If you make an offer or a key statement, don't rush to fill the silence afterward. Let the other person process it. Often, they will feel the need to respond just to break the silence, and in doing so, they may reveal more than they intended. When you master the pause, you no longer fear silence, you control it. You learn that words are only as powerful as the space around them, and as you begin to embrace the pause, you'll notice something interesting. People will start listening more closely. They will respect your words more. They will feel your presence in the room. Because true power isn't in constant speech, it's in knowing when to say nothing at all. Chapter 11. Speaking with precision, cutting the noise. Words lose their power when they are buried under excess. The more we speak without purpose, the less people listen. Precision is not just about being brief. It's about saying exactly what needs to be said and nothing more. Most people don't realize how much they dilute their own impact by over-explaining, using vague language, or piling on unnecessary details. They believe that the more context they provide, the more convincing they will be. But in reality, the opposite is true. Think about the people who hold your attention effortlessly. They don't ramble. They don't repeat themselves. They don't dance around their point. Instead, they say what they mean with clarity, confidence, and control. Now think about those who speak in circles, who add disclaimer after disclaimer, who struggle to get to the point. Their words blend into the background. They are heard but rarely remembered. If you want people to truly absorb what you say, you must learn the art of precision. The first step is removing unnecessary words. Right now, you may be unconsciously weakening your own statements with filler language. Phrases like, "in my opinion," "to be honest," "I just feel like," "sort of, kind of, maybe." These words add hesitation. They signal uncertainty. They dilute your message. Instead of saying, "I just feel like this could be a better approach," say, "this is a better approach." Instead of saying, "in my opinion, this is the right decision," say, "this is the right decision." At first, this may feel blunt, but clarity is not rudeness. It is confidence. And when you remove verbal clutter, people take your words more seriously. Try this. The next time you speak, challenge yourself to cut your sentence in half. Say the same thing with fewer words. Then notice how people respond. The second step is getting to the point faster. Many people waste the first few seconds of their speaking time on unnecessary build-up. They introduce their point with disclaimers, background stories, or unrelated details. By the time they get to what actually matters, attention has already faded. If you start a statement with, "I don't know if this is a good idea, but I was thinking that maybe," you've already lost the listener's focus. Instead, start with, "Here's the idea." Get straight to it. People process information more effectively when it is delivered cleanly. If you want your words to stick, put the most important part first. The third step is choosing words that carry weight. Many people weaken their message by using soft, vague, or passive language. Instead of saying, "We might want to consider doing this," say, "Let's do this." Instead of, "I think this could work," say, "This works." Precision is about eliminating doubt. If you are unsure about something, it's better to say, "I need more information before deciding," than to hedge with uncertainty. When you speak with precision, people stop tuning you out. They listen. They remember. Because power isn't in the number of words you say, it's in how well you say them. Chapter 12. Owning the room without over-talking. There's a common misconception that to dominate a room, you must be the one speaking the most. That the person who talks the loudest, the longest, or with the most enthusiasm is the one who holds power. But the opposite is true. The people who truly command a room, whether in meetings, conversations, or social interactions, are not those who speak the most. They are those who own the space between words. They know when to speak and, more importantly, when to hold back. They understand that presence is not about volume but about intention. Think about the people who draw you in effortlessly. They don't rush to fill silences. They don't fight for attention. They don't compete for airtime. Instead, they move through a conversation like they belong there, without force, without excess, without seeking approval. Now think about the ones who dominate with noise. They interrupt. They over-explain. They repeat themselves. They try too hard. Instead of commanding attention, they demand it. Instead of drawing people in, they wear them out. The difference is not personality. It's not natural charisma. It's an understanding of how real presence works. The first step to owning the room without over-talking is becoming comfortable with silence. Right now, you may feel an unconscious pressure to respond quickly. If someone asks a question, you might rush to answer. If there's a pause, you might feel the need to fill it. This is a mistake. When you respond too quickly, you diminish the weight of your words. You give the impression that you're speaking on impulse rather than intention. And most importantly, you miss an opportunity to control the rhythm of the interaction. Try this. The next time someone asks you something, wait a moment before answering. Let the silence build. You'll notice something interesting. Their attention sharpens. They anticipate your response. They lean in. Silence, when used with purpose, is a display of confidence. It signals that you are thinking, that your words carry weight, and that you are not seeking approval. The second step is cutting the need to over-explain. Most people talk too much because they fear they haven't been understood. They repeat themselves. They add unnecessary details. They clarify things that don't need clarification. But the more you explain, the less impact your words have. If you say something and immediately follow it with, "What I mean is," or "just to clarify," you are teaching people to disregard your first statement. You are training them to tune you out until you've repeated yourself a few times. Instead, say what you mean once, clearly, directly, and with certainty. Then stop. If someone needs more information, they will ask. If they don't, they didn't need the extra explanation. The third step is letting others do more of the talking. One of the most overlooked ways to command attention is to say less and listen more. When you give people space to speak, they naturally become more engaged with you. They feel heard. They open up. And most importantly, they begin to value your words more because they become rarer. Try this. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to jump in with your thoughts immediately. Instead, pause, ask a question. Let the other person fill the space. You'll notice something powerful. The less you say, the more people respect what you do say. Owning the room is not about being the loudest voice. It's about being the most deliberate voice. The one that doesn't need to fight for attention, because when you speak, people listen. Chapter 13. Speaking less, saying more. Most people believe that in order to be persuasive, memorable, or respected, they need to contribute more words. They assume that impact is measured by how much they say. But the reality is, those who truly influence others don't talk more, they talk better. Speaking less is not about withholding or being distant. It's about making every word count. It's about stripping away the unnecessary so that what remains is pure impact. Consider the way great leaders, storytellers, and negotiators speak. They don't drown you in words. They don't clutter their message with unnecessary details. They say what matters and they let it land. Now think about those who ramble, repeat, and over-explain. Their words blur together. They say too much, yet somehow communicate very little. This chapter is about shifting from wordiness to precision with impact, so that when you speak, people listen, remember, and act. The first step is eliminating verbal clutter. Many of us unconsciously weaken our own speech with extra words that serve no purpose. Phrases like, "What I'm trying to say is," "If that makes sense," "Does that sound okay?" "You know what I mean." These phrases don't add clarity, they add doubt. They signal to others that you are unsure of your own words, and when you seem unsure, people tune you out. Instead, practice stripping away these unnecessary additions. If you make a statement, let it stand on its own. If someone doesn't understand, they will ask. If they don't ask, they got the message. The second step is speaking with structured impact. People retain information better when it is delivered in a structured way. If you're presenting an idea, don't meander through it, deliver it cleanly. One of the most effective structures is, start with the key point, say what matters first, provide only the necessary details. No filler, no fluff. End with certainty. Finish with confidence, not an open-ended tone. Instead of saying, "I have a few things to say about this idea, and I'm not sure how it'll come across, but I think it might be helpful if we looked at option A instead of option B, and the reason I feel this way is that option A aligns more with what we initially discussed. Does that make sense?" Say, "Option A aligns better with what we discussed. Let's go with that." Fewer words, more impact. The third step is letting silence do some of the work for you. When you reduce the number of words you use, silence becomes part of your message. Instead of rushing to fill gaps, let them breathe. Instead of over-explaining, let the weight of your words linger. People often try to persuade by adding more words, but sometimes the most persuasive thing you can do is say less and stop talking. Try this. The next time you express an idea, stop as soon as you've made your point. Resist the urge to add just one more thing. Let the silence settle. Watch how people respond when they aren't distracted by excess words. Speaking less isn't about restraint, it's about amplifying impact. It's about removing the unnecessary so that what remains is impossible to ignore. Chapter 14. The strength of stillness. Mastering presence without words. There is a power stronger than words, a presence that commands respect without a single sound. Some of the most influential people in history, the ones who shift rooms and demand attention effortlessly, do so not by speaking more, but by holding space in absolute stillness. Most people think they need to prove themselves with words. They fill silences to avoid discomfort, speak quickly to keep up, and mistake movement for influence. But those who own the room know that presence is not about doing, it's about being. Right now, you may be unconsciously diminishing your own presence by relying too much on speech. You may feel a need to explain yourself, to always contribute, or to fill gaps in conversation. But the truth is, the most powerful people in any setting do not chase attention. They attract it by their very presence. This chapter is about mastering the art of stillness, a skill that makes your words more impactful, your presence more magnetic, and your influence undeniable. The first step is learning to be comfortable in silence. Most people fear silence because they associate it with awkwardness or social failure. If there's a pause in conversation, they scramble to fill it. If they're in a group, they feel pressured to speak up just to be part of the discussion. But those who understand true influence know that silence is not empty, it's intentional space. Think about the most confident person you know. Do they rush to speak? Do they seem uneasy when no one is talking? Or do they sit calmly, fully present, unbothered by the space between words? Try this. The next time you're in a conversation, practice holding the silence. Instead of jumping in immediately when there's a pause, let it settle. Notice what happens. More often than not, the other person will feel compelled to speak first, revealing more than they intended. This is the power of silence. It creates openings. When you are comfortable with silence, you project confidence. You show that you are not seeking approval, not trying to prove yourself, not dependent on constant validation. And when you do speak, people listen, because they know you do not waste words. The second step is using stillness to increase your presence. Many people think influence is about energy, being animated, expressive, physically engaging. But while movement has its place, too much of it weakens your impact. The most captivating speakers are not the ones who constantly shift, gesture wildly, or fidget. They are the ones who know how to be still. If you want to exude quiet authority, start by owning your physical space. Instead of shifting uncomfortably, stand or sit with grounded, deliberate stillness. Instead of making unnecessary movements, let every gesture have meaning. Instead of nervously adjusting your posture, settle into yourself with confidence. Try this. The next time you enter a room, walk in without hesitation. No unnecessary movements, no scanning for approval, just pure, steady presence. Notice how people respond when you carry yourself with intention. People who master stillness become magnetic. Their presence alone shifts dynamics. They don't need to force control of a room, they already have it. The third step is knowing when to say nothing at all. We are conditioned to believe that the only way to influence a situation is to speak into it. But sometimes, the most powerful response is silence. Imagine a negotiation where one person speaks and then waits. The other party, uncomfortable with the pause, rushes to fill it, often revealing more than they should. Imagine a leader who, instead of reacting emotionally, simply listens, processes, and lets their silence carry weight. Try this. The next time someone challenges you, instead of immediately defending yourself, pause. Hold the silence. Let the other person feel the weight of their own words. Often, they will weaken their position simply because they feel the need to over-explain. Silence is not a lack of action. It is an intentional choice. When you master it, you no longer chase validation, you no longer feel pressured to prove yourself, and you no longer waste words. Instead, your presence alone carries unshakable influence. This is the strength of stillness, a power so profound that when you do speak, your words change everything. Chapter 15. The echo of fewer words leaving a lasting impact at the end of every conversation, every meeting and every interaction. One question lingers. What will they remember? Most people believe that the more they say, the more they will be remembered. That if they pour out everything they know, their impact will be stronger. But memory doesn't work that way. Influence doesn't work that way. The most unforgettable people are not those who say the most, but those who say the right things, and leave space for those words to echo. Right now, you may be speaking in a way that makes you easy to forget. Maybe you explain too much, diluting your point. Maybe you rush through your words, never giving them time to land. Maybe you talk in circles, giving people no clear idea of what to take away. But the people who truly leave an impact don't rely on quantity. They trust their words. They speak them with certainty, then let them settle. This final chapter is about what lingers after you speak, how to ensure that your words don't just fill air, but stay with people long after the conversation is over. The first step is making your words precise enough to be repeatable. If you can't summarize your point in a single sentence, you haven't refined it enough. People don't remember long-winded explanations, but they do remember sharp, repeatable phrases. Think about the quotes that stick in your mind, the ones from great leaders, writers, and thinkers. They aren't long. They aren't complicated. They are short, clear, and undeniable. Try this. Before you speak, ask yourself, what's the one line I want them to remember? Instead of over-explaining, build your message around that. Let everything else be supporting evidence, not excess noise. When your words are sharp and repeatable, they spread. They get passed from one person to the next. They take on a life of their own. The second step is letting your pauses do some of the work. Most people rush to the next sentence before their first one has landed. They don't give people time to absorb. But words don't make an impact in motion. They make an impact in space. Try this. The next time you make a strong point, stop. Let it breathe. Let people feel the weight of what you just said before moving on. You'll notice something powerful. Your words begin to echo. When you pause, people replay your last sentence in their minds. They process it. They internalize it. They don't just hear it, they feel it. The third step is ending in a way that sticks. Many people dilute their impact by ending weakly. They trail off. They add unnecessary afterthoughts. They speak with uncertainty, making their words easy to forget. But those who understand real influence know that the last thing you say is what stays the longest. Try this. The next time you finish a conversation, a speech, or even just a point, end decisively. No trailing explanations, no second guessing. Say what matters and stop. Instead of, "So yeah, I guess that's what I was thinking. Does that make sense?" Say, "That's why this matters." Then stop. Instead of, "Anyway, just something to consider, but I don't know, what do you think?" Say, "That's something worth thinking about." Then stop. People will remember the strength of your ending. They will remember the words that lingered after you stopped speaking. This is the secret of lasting influence. It's not about how much you say. It's about what remains when you say nothing at all. As you move forward, speak with intention. Trust your silence. Let your words land. And remember, what you say less of will always be more powerful than what others waste. Conclusion. The power you now hold. You have spent your entire life surrounded by noise, words spoken without thought, conversations filled with excess, voices competing for attention but rarely making an impact. You've seen people who speak endlessly yet say nothing, and you've likely fallen into that pattern yourself at times. But now, you understand something deeper. Speaking less is not about retreating. It is not about holding back or making yourself small. It is about owning your voice so fully that you no longer need to overuse it. You have learned to break free from the compulsion to fill space with unnecessary words. You have trained yourself to speak with intention, not insecurity. You have discovered the undeniable strength of silence, presence, and precision. Most importantly, you have learned that powerful words do not chase attention, they command it. From this moment forward, you will not speak for the sake of speaking. You will not dilute your words with apologies, explanations, or hesitation. You will not undermine your presence by filling silence with empty noise. Instead, you will let your words matter. You will pause when others rush. You will listen when others compete to be heard. You will speak only when it is necessary, and when you do, your voice will cut through the clutter. You will watch as people begin to lean in when you speak. You will see how your silence unsettles those who rely on noise. You will feel the shift when your words land with impact, rather than dissolve into forgettable conversation. And when you choose to speak, you will notice something profound. People will listen, not because you forced them to, not because you demanded their attention, but because you have become the rarest kind of communicator, someone who speaks only when it truly matters. You now hold a power that most will never understand, a power that cannot be taken, only chosen. So choose it. From this moment forward, speak less and say more.